Daniel here for Tabletop for One and my 10 after 10 solo review of Earth. Now, Earth is a Kickstarter game designed by Maxime Tardif and published by Inside Up Games and has taken the board gaming world by storm. It's been on the hotness on BGG for a while. It is a Tableau building game where you're trying to build out the best island with a different climate and achieve various objectives, build this 16-card tableau, and of course, gain the most points. Now, in the solo mode, you will be playing against an Automa opponent called Gaia, and Gaia will compete with you for those objectives, and you will compare your scores at the end of the game. And so after 10 plays, I have 10 things that I'd like to highlight about Earth. First, I want to talk about shelf presence. I know shelf presence has nothing to do with gameplay, but let's face it, some of us like good-looking games on our shelves. And Earth is absolutely no exception. Check out the cover here. It's beautiful, it's striking, it catches the attention. And I have to say it's probably the best looking cover of any game in my collection, except maybe for Daimyo here. I happen to love that cover. But yeah, Earth looks really good on the shelf, and I happen to appreciate that. And so for number 2, let's talk about the art and graphic design. Now, I feel as though the graphic design and the art are in competition with each other instead of complementing each other. The art on the cards, the photographs, are beautiful, and they provide a good picture of what the flora or the fauna or the climate are for that particular card. But the graphic design on the player boards and on the main boards feel like more like prototype graphics, and they're a little bit in stark contrast with the art. And on top of that, the color choices for the action banners on the cards just seem to contrast too much with the photographs of the flora and the fauna. Maybe I'm wrong with this, but it just distracts me when I see that contrast. And so for number 3, let's talk about the production quality. I hate to be negative again, but the production quality is not that great with this game. The tree trunk pieces that you're supposed to stack together here are warped, or they have added wood pieces inside the channel that don't allow them to stack properly. So you can see it leaning over, and you just don't have a chance to keep it standing up during the game. So I end up just getting rid of the trunk pieces, placing down a single canopy when a tree is completed. And that way I'm not knocking them down, or if I barely bump the table, they fall over. That never happens, and it's easier to track that way, which is unfortunate. And I don't know if you can see here, but all the boards are warped. And part of that may be just a production or humidity or something like that. I've done everything possible to unwarp or unbend those boards, but part of the problem is that they don't fit in the box. So I've placed these player boards down at the bottom so you can see, but they don't fall out. And that's a problem. They're stuck in there. And so either you don't lay them flat and you lay them over the components so they don't stick in there, or you lay them flat and they get bowed or further bowed by the way they stick in there. Either way, it doesn't work too well. I tend to like to lay my player boards at the bottom of the box, so when I stack everything on it, it stays flattened out. But in this situation, it doesn't work so well. There's some other things I could point out, but I'm not going to nitpick it. I think what happened, and I could be wrong in this, but I think what happened is maybe they bit off more than they can chew, or promised more than they could deliver for the price of the game. Because don't get me wrong, the price of the game was great. But what they were offering as far as production quality might have been higher in manufacturing costs. They may have run out of time to fix the problems. I just don't know. I think they should have reverted to the original tree trunks. I think they should have taken a little more time with the pre-production copy and make sure the quality was the best that they could offer. But all in all, it's an unfortunate thing. And it does affect the gameplay, especially the tree trunks, especially the warp player boards. And I just kind of wish they would have taken a little more time on that. But hopefully future production copies of this game will be better, given they know what went wrong with this current production. And so number 4, I'll talk about the rulebook. There's not much to touch on here with the rulebook. It's a decent rulebook, has a lot of illustrations, it flows in a logical manner. There is some ambiguity on the setup with the solo AI as far as picking difficulty levels and standard or advanced setups. There's some confusion there. It could have been explained a little bit better. And for whatever reason, there's no clear iconography guide in the rulebook. There's not one on the back. There's not a separate player guide. There really should be. And I'll touch on that more later because you're going to tell me they're on the player boards, but we'll touch on that later when I talk about the ease of solo play. And now for number 5, let's talk about the gameplay. The core gameplay of Earth is centered around an action selection mechanic with a follow mechanic. I happen to love follow mechanics, so this is right up my alley. And so on your turn, you're going to pick an action. You'll get to do the action, and then the AI will get a benefit for you doing that action. And sometimes it's modified by what you do or how much you gain. Sometimes if you gain a lot of soil, the AI will gain a lot of soil itself or more compost cards or something like that. So every action you choose benefits the AI in a certain way, and it provides an interesting challenge to balance when you choose those actions and how much you produce or that sort of thing, because you don't want to benefit the AI too much. And the same goes for the AI. When the AI chooses an action, you're able to gain a benefit from that action and run your production with that specific color that's chosen by the AI. And so it provides a good push and pull between you and the AI as you race to win the game, because the game ends after 12 rounds or after you develop your entire tableau, your 16-card tableau. And with that, let's go on to number 6, the tableau. So in building out this tableau, you are lining up cards on a grid. You had to place them adjacent to each other, diagonally or orthogonally. But you're trying to set them up so that you can trigger the actions on the cards to produce one thing here and then spend it here to gain something else that you can use later down in the action. And of course, it goes left to right and top to bottom. And so you're going to try and sequence your cards in a way that provides the best engine. So one card may give you a tree trunk, which lets you spend the tree trunk on the next card for a couple sprouts. And the next card requires you spend a couple sprouts for some soil. The next card lets you spend a soil to compost 3 cards, and so on. So there's a lot of chaining of combos, and you're able to work your way down your tableau if you build it efficiently. However, the end result of what you gain is maybe a couple sprouts, maybe a few points, a couple compost cards, maybe a card to your hand. The net result of what you spend to make those actions happen and what you get doesn't feel like you gained a lot. I almost kind of wish that the production was just straight up production. This card gives you 3 sprouts. This one gives you 1 canopy. This one gives you 1 card. There are some cards that do that, but most of them are pay this to gain that. And it's just not as impactful as I feel it could be. Nevertheless, the chaining of those combos is really satisfying if you like combo chaining. And so for number 7, let's talk about the many paths to victory. Earth provides you with lots of different ways that you can score points. You can just stack your compost deck because each of those cards give you a point. You can have a tableau that's all about sprouts or all about trees. Or you can focus solely on the climate cards and terrain cards that give you endgame bonuses. There's lots of ways to score points, and each path feels viable. It doesn't feel like one is better than the other. It feels like you have different ways that you can explore. And so for number 8, let's talk about the cards. So many cards. All right, there's this huge stack of cards that you have, and looking at it right away makes you feel like, am I going to actually get what I want out of that deck? Because are you going to cycle through all those cards? Well, in fact, you do cycle through a lot of cards. A lot of cards, however, get put face down in the compost pile, and so you never know what they are. At the same time, the designer somehow struck a balance with what cards are in the deck. The designer obviously tried to provide a good amount of distribution in the deck so that you always come up with cards that are useful in some way, shape, or form. Now, that means you have to be more tactical than strategic sometimes, but really, I never felt like the deck was played against me. I felt like every time I drew a card or drew 4 cards and I had to choose one, there was always a card that was beneficial to me at that moment. And so for number 9, let's talk about the ease of solo play. Now the AI is super easy to run. It has a deck of 6 cards. 4 of those cards have one of each of the actions, and then 2 of those cards complete an objective on the objective board. So it's as simple as turning over a card and running it through top to bottom. It takes a few seconds to run, and then you're back to playing your game. You don't really have to make any decisions for the AI, except maybe deciding between one of two objectives that it's going to choose, but really that's your decision for your benefit, because you can choose one that you don't think you're going to complete. And so I told you I was going to talk to you about the player aids, the lack of player aids, and how it affects the ease of solo play. So on the player board itself, you do not have an iconography on here that tells you what each of the icons mean and what they're there for. Unfortunately, they included on all the multiplayer boards. Down here at the bottom, you'll see that they have all the icons there. And so it makes me feel like, all right, why do the multiplayer player counts get that benefit, but the solo player doesn't? It's kind of an oversight, I think, on that. So your first few plays, I recommend taking a separate player board and setting it aside face up so you have those icons available until you learn what they are. That being said, once you do learn what they are, you won't need that anymore. But again, I think it's a bit of an oversight not to have it. On top of that, like, they gave you an achievement sheet which has a blank side. They could have easily put them on here, a full player icon reference guide. It would have been simple to print that on the other side, but for whatever reason, they chose not to. And yet, overall, the solo play is very easy to run, easy to administer. After a few plays, your game's going to go quick. You're talking a half hour, 45 minutes. And so for number 10, let's talk about the replayability. With multiple objectives, 4 levels of AI to choose from, you got climate cards, you got other variation, different strategies to approach. There's a lot of replayability in this game. Now, one thing I noticed when playing against the AI is the AI always scored 56 or 60 points in the objectives. That means it got the top spot 4 times, or 3 of the 4. And so it felt very samey when it came to the objectives. In fact, it didn't make it seem like it was worth it to me to focus on those objectives, because the AI would always score at least 3 of the 4. And so I decided to just better spend my time elsewhere and try and build up that 16 card tableau. And I think that's where it shines on the replayability. Trying to build that 16 card tableau in 12 turns is a challenge. It provides an interesting puzzle that is different every time you play, because the cards that come out and the way the AI cards come out are different every time. And I highly recommend you go that route of trying to build that 16 card tableau, because that challenge and that puzzle is so satisfying when you finally accomplish it. And so my final score is 7 out of 10 for Earth. The game is unfortunately marred by poor production and quality of life issues. I know I'm in the minority here, because there are quite a few people who look beyond that and don't have any issue with it, or it doesn't affect their gameplay or an enjoyment of it. So I guess I'm different here, and my score may ruffle a few feathers, but we'll see. However, the game design is good. The AI is very challenging. The action selection and tableau building is very interesting as well. If you enjoy nature themes, tableau building, streamlined AI, and high replayability, then this is a good game for you, and I hope you enjoy it. And so this has been my 10 after 10 solo review of Earth. Please ask me any questions in the comments below. Feel free to tell me how wrong I was about my score. I'm definitely interested in hearing your opinions, so please let me know. Please also like and subscribe to this channel if you like the content you see here, and I thank you very much for watching Tabletop for One. Have a great night.